everyone. Welcome to day 21 in Carrie's Corner. We're going to continue our read of the Pushcart War by Jean Merrill, illustrated by Ronnie Sobert. I love that photo on the front cover. And we're starting in the middle of Joey's journal. 12:15 p.m., 9th Avenue and 69th Street. I thought I was going to make 86th Street by lunchtime, but there's still trouble up ahead, so I will continue. After Big Mo says, "Poor trucks," a trucker named Little Milty stands up. Little Milty says, "I agree with Big Mo. Why blame the poor trucks? If you ask me, it is all those push carts that are blocking the streets." Nobody likes this Little Milty too much, as he is known as a very mean driver. By that I mean that Little Milty would crowd out another truck as soon as he would a taxi. Here they are, all talking at that big meeting. Once Little Milty gets a big hand, and about 10 different truck drivers then begin to tell how slow the pushcarts are, and how pushcarts are always sitting by the curb where a trucker wants to park, and how pushcarts should not be allowed to take up space in a modern city like New York. Once more I have to laugh, and this time everyone hears me, so I explain, "Come on, how much room do a few pushcarts take?" Because I personally do not mind the pushcarts. When I am stuck in traffic, like today, like almost any day for that matter, a pushcart will come along and sell me a sausage roll, which passes the time. You get the best sausage rolls around Thompson Street, 69th, where I am now. It's not too good for sausage rolls. Looks like something is moving up ahead, so I will put this away until another time. 9th Avenue and 75th Street, 4:05 p.m. Now there is a trailer truck backed up the curve at 76th. It is sticking halfway out into the street. The taxi driver ahead of me says that they are unloading permanent wave machines and that it will be a half-hour tie-up at least. So I may as well finish writing about the secret meeting, which, while it's still fresh in my mind, I left off with how I was speaking up for the pushcarts. "Come on," I say. "How much room do a few pushcarts take?" I addressed my question to a driver named Mac. "You could line up 24 pushcarts along the curb before those carts would take up 1/2 the space of a truck like Mighty Mammoth," I point out to Mac. Mac drives a Mighty Mammoth. "Or a 10-ton Tiger," I say, putting myself in the same spot. When I mention a 10-ton Tiger, Big Mo looks at my boss. My boss is Mr. Walter Sweet, who is sitting right beside Big Mo, as he is one of the three. Big Mo asks Walter Street, "Does this boy drive for Tiger Trucking?" A silly question, as I have as much as said I drive a 10-ton Tiger, and the boss has to admit I do. I'm sorry if I have embarrassed the boss. Mr. Walter Sweet has a kind heart for the most part. "Do you have anything more to say, Mr. Caffees?" Big Mo asked me, and he asked me in such a tone of voice that I know he's telling me he could be helpful in helping me to lose my job with Tiger Trucking. However, I am not afraid of Big Mo. It occurred to me a long time ago that there are so many reasons you could lose a job that if you started to worry about them all, you'd be afraid to say anything. And for anyone who has a lot to say as I do, this would be a hardship. However, I shut up for the simple reason that I do not have anything else to say at the moment. It is such a nutty argument about the push carts. There's the trucker getting some sausage, I think. That's our journal writer. The next speaker at the meeting is Louis Livergreen. Louis owns all those Leaping Limas on Lower East Side and has pretty well cut everybody else out of the business down there. Now, Louis speaks in a very smooth way. He is not a pleasant-looking man, but he speaks in a smooth voice. I have noticed that each of the three speaks in a different way. Big Mo speaks in a loud voice. "A voice like a truck driver," my sister once said, which I felt was an insulting remark, but many people think of truck drivers in this way. The Tiger, on the other hand, has a low voice, and Louis Livergreen, on the third hand, speaks, as I mentioned, in a smooth voice. Of the three, it is Louis Livergreen that I would be afraid of, and I think that is because his voice is as smooth as a good grade of motor oil, whether he's saying something perfectly pleasant or something terrible. If somebody says something terrible in a pleasant tone of voice, I get very nervous. I would feel better if they yelled. Well, as I said, Louis Livergreen starts to talk about the drivers in that smooth voice. "Our boys are telling us that the pushcarts are ruining the city," Louis says. "And believe me, I am glad that you have been so frank about the trouble. Mr. Mammoth and Mr. Sweet and myself are not out in the trucks so much ourselves as we have to rely on our boys to give us the facts. And now that we have got the facts," said Louis, It is very clear what we have got to do. Louis explains that what we have got to do is to educate the public. When people complain about the traffic, he says, we have got to tell the people who is to blame. Obviously, they will be blaming the trucks. From the tone of his voice and the respectful way the truck drivers are listening to him, Louis could be delivering a sermon in a church, which is not exactly the case. I know what you boys are up against, Louis goes on to say. I operate on the east side where most of the push carts also operate, and I know these people. They are behind the times and a danger to the rest of us, and they have got to go. Louis gets a big hand at this point, but he is not finished. I will tell you something else, he says, and it is not something I am proud of. My own father was a pushcart peddler, and if I had not got the guts to get out and fight for myself, no matter who was in the way, I'd be pushing a pushcart myself. Instead, Louis points out, I have built up the firm of Lima and put 100 leaping Limas on the streets every day of the year, rain or shine, and that I am proud of. Louis gets a big hand again, not from me though. While I agree that 100 trucks is something to be proud of, I do not see why a man wants to talk as Louis is talking about his father, who maybe did not have such an easy time and rain or shine is out in the streets with a pushcart. Whereas Louis, if it rains, can send out 100 drivers. Louis has a few other remarks, mainly this one. I think you boys know that the Lower East Side Moving Association has been working on a master plan for the streets of New York, a plan that will greatly improve the situation for truck drivers. I have discussed this plan with Mr. Mo Mammoth and Mr. Walter Sweet, and the plan is moving forward nicely. But before it can go into effect, we have got to solve the pushcart problem. I have not heard about this master plan of Louis Livergreen's before, but all around me drivers are nodding as if it is a fine idea. I asked several of the boys about it, and they say it is probably the usual thing to make things better for the truckers in the streets and maybe more money for the drivers. I don't know about the master plan, but it seems to me the idea of the meeting is that the three are declaring war on the pushcarts. Well, I must sign off now, as the taxi driver ahead is signaling that they have got these permanent wave machines off the trailer. Unfortunately, I see that it is 5:30, so I will have to take the pipe organs back to the warehouse and try to get to 86th Street tomorrow. Really, traffic is lousy. Chapter 9, The Secret Campaign Against the Pushcarts. The Pushcart War is generally divided into two major campaigns. The first of these is referred to as the Secret Campaign, for although we now have the evidence of Caffey's diary that the three had declared war on the pushcarts at the secret meeting, this declaration was not at the time made public. This gave the trucks an enormous advantage in the beginning. The pushcart peddlers themselves did not know for over a month that the truckers had declared war on them. All they knew was that suddenly the truck drivers were nudging their pushcarts out of the way more and more often, and that they were nudging harder and harder. In 1 week alone, more than 100 carts were brought into Maxie Hammerman's for repairs. Maxie repaired broken slatting, broken spokes, broken handles, and bent axles. Many of the pushcarts had to be entirely rebuilt, and Maxie did not have the time to build any new carts. Also, the number of serious accidents involving pushcarts increased, and several peddlers needed hospital treatment for broken legs or crushed ribs. At first, the pushcart peddlers thought that all these troubles were simply a case of the already terrible traffic conditions getting rapidly worse. Then they began to hear puzzling remarks from people standing on street corners. Whenever someone complained about the traffic, there was always someone else on hand to say, I hear it's the pushcarts that are to blame. People always said, I hear, where they had heard nobody was sure. A great many of the rumors probably came from readers of a weekly newspaper called The Ears and Eyes of the Lower East Side. This paper was published as a community service by Lima Lower East Side Moving Association. The Ears and Eyes was given away free to grocery stores to pass on to their customers. It is also sent free to members of the city council and other important people. In the Ears and Eyes, there was a regular column by a man who signed himself the Community Reporter. The Community Reporter wrote a great many columns just before the war, what he called the Pushcart Menace. The community reporter reported that people wanted to get rid of the pushcarts in order to make the streets of the city safer and more attractive. He said that people said that the pushcarts were unsound and unsanitary. The community reporter was always telling people about what people wanted. Before he began writing about the pushcart menace, he wrote about trees. He said that people also wanted to get rid of the trees planted along the sidewalks of the city so the streets could be wider and more attractive. He said that the trees were unsanitary too because leaves were always falling on the sidewalk. The community reporter said that people thought the streets should be wider and more attractive. There goes my dog barking at the garbage. Speaking of streets, the garbage truck is going by on the street. Even if it meant getting rid of the sidewalks in some of the houses and schools and churches and small candy stores, many of these were unsound and unsanitary anyway, he said. However, in the spring before the war, it was mainly the pushcarts that the community reporter wrote about. He made it sound as if pushcarts were even more unsound and unsanitary than trees, houses, schools, churches, and candy stores. It is uncertain how many people read the eyes and ears. Some grocers said they had trouble giving it away, as most of their customers did not mind a few leaves falling off trees. But enough people did see the community reporter's column for one of the most respectable daily papers to announce a series entitled, "Pushcarts, Are They a Menace to Our Streets?" A pair of this series, a reporter interviewed as part of this series, a reporter interviewed Mo Mammoth. This was the day after a mama mammoth had upset 3 vegetable carts on Avenue C. "That poor mama," said Big Mo. "Tomatoes all over the street and 20 pushcart peddlers yelling at the truck driver and picking up broken tomatoes and throwing them at him. What kind of working conditions are those?" "Are you saying the pushcarts are a menace?" asked the reporter. "The facts speak for themselves," said Big Mo. "As a public service, Mr. Louis Livergreen of the Lower East Side Movers Association, which has 100 trucks out on the streets every day, has made a count of the number of accidents involving pushcarts in the last month. In the last month alone," Big Mo said, "Mr. Livergreen tells me there have been 141 more pushcart accidents than in the month before. My own drivers," Big Mo added, "have orders to report every pushcart accident they see, and they say they are held up by pushcarts several times a day." "And you think that these accidents are tying up the traffic?" asked the reporter. "That's what my drivers say," said Big Mo. "Of course, we all know the pushcarts are not designed for modern traffic conditions." When Maxie Hammerman read that last remark, he was so angry that he threw a hammer through his own shop window. "Not designed!" he roared at Frank the Flower, who had stopped by Maxie's shop to have a few bolts tightened on his cart. "Someone is saying that a pushcart is not designed? A pushcart is perfectly designed," Maxie said, glowering at his broken window. "Look now," he said, slapping the side of Frank the Flower's cart. "Look how compact, so it shouldn't take up too much space in a crowded street." "I'm not complaining," said Frank the Flower. "Designed," growled Maxie Hammerman, normally a pleasant-tempered man. He was really very insulted. And that is where we are going to stop for today. Stay tuned tomorrow for the Pushcart War by Jean Merrill. And if you want to check out the other recording I'm doing every day, I've started Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. You'll just see it labeled HP and the Sorcerer's Stone. See you tomorrow. Thanks for listening. Bye-bye. Bye. Cute frog. He was cuddling the whole time. Bye-bye.